to the overall economic growth story. But let's move right on then, and we've got a corporate voice lined up. We're talking to the management of Arman Financial, which is an NBFC providing microfinance and two-wheeler and three-wheeler finance. The stock has been doing pretty well of late. Let's connect with Aalok J. Patel, the ED of Arman Financial Services. Now, let's talk numbers first up, because Q3 saw your total AUM growth dipping a bit. What exactly is the outlook on your disbursements in the two-wheeler business and the MFI business post the note ban?
First, thanks for having me. As far as disbursements were concerned, for our microfinance division, since the disbursement occurs in cash, we had absolutely no disbursements in November and December because there was no cash liquidity available. And in January, we were a little busy collecting the repayments, the repayment backlog. So from February onwards, we have started disbursements in our microfinance loan book. And in this month, we expected to start getting back to normal. So we lost about 3 odd months of disbursements. That's why you're seeing the loan book dip. As far as the two-wheeler is concerned, that has actually increased about 15 crores since the demonetization took place, and that's because all the disbursements happen on a non-cash basis. So while there was a little bit of dip in December month, we managed covering up in January and to a certain extent in February as well. So that has been doing quite well.
Okay. Give us your plans going into the new financial year. Maybe this is a bit soon, but how do you see the demand for loans panning out in FY18?
Well, for microfinance side, I think the demand was always there. It was such an untouched market to begin with that the demand was always there. But post demonetization, that demand has even gone up a lot because most MFIs did not disperse in November, December, and most of January. So there is a lot of pent-up demand, and I think now that the UP elections are over and Maharashtra is settling down, and a lot of the political issues that we saw coming up in numerous states are settling down, I think the sky's the limit back again for microfinance. We had a little bit of a speed bump as far as the growth is concerned due to demonetization, but things should get back to normal starting from April, I believe. So next year, I think our targets will be in line with what they have been in the past. About a 60% AUM growth is what we should be targeting. But it is a little early to tell because, after demonetization, it kind of put us in a new ball game. So we are working on numerous things to make our disbursements into cashless and considering, other avenues to grow the business like MSME and things of that sort. So we already started pilots on those sides. So it should be an interesting year coming up.
And what about your margins? What is the outlook going forward? Because they did expand last quarter to about 18.2%. What's the outlook?
So as far as the outlook, you should see a slight reduction in the NIMs because of the expenses that we had to undertake due to demonetization. There's also an extra provisioning that we made, which should affect the bottom line to a certain extent. Whatever discipline that was broken from demonetization, there should be a slight increase in the loan loss for the entire industry. But I think these things come up every 5-6 years in the industry, so it's nothing that we can't. It was anticipated, to a certain extent, and it's nothing that our balance sheet cannot take because we have a very strong balance sheet to begin with.
Fair enough. Exposure to states like UP, and are you looking at expanding market share there?
Yeah, I think we were going slow relatively in UP because of the UP election, and there were certain, let's say, political issues in the UP market, especially in the western UP area. But our portfolio has performed fine. Our repayment rates in UP are well above 98% cumulative now. So compared to a lot of other players in UP, we have come out relatively unscathed. So what our expansion plan is, we're still working on it on the UP side. But it's obvious until things clear up that we'll be approaching the state little cautiously than we were earlier.
And how sufficient are you on the capital front? Any capital raising plans that you've got in the pipeline?
Yeah, so earlier we were planning to raise equity around April or May of FY18, but that plan can be delayed by another 4 to 6 months or so, considering that there was a slight decline in portfolio, and the growth numbers in the coming couple of months should be less than we were used to. So probably in about Q2, there should be some equity infusion as we approach the capital adequacy ratio.
Okay. How are you looking at combating competition? Because as you're aware as well, Aalok, there's enough and more struggle to gain market share. So what's the plan in terms of ensuring that you are very much in the game, and strongly so? Could there be opportunities to grow inorganically in terms of taking the M&A route?
So the M&A route, I don't think that we are rather small to consider the M&A route at the moment. But definitely we have been starting to diversify our product lines, so getting into more towards MSME and individual lending, because the group loans do work, but they cover a very small segment of the bottom of the pyramid. So there is a huge demand in the rural segment that we are not covering through the the group-based loans. So product diversification is probably one thing.
Okay. No, but very quickly, have you been, fine, you're not looking at M&A because of your size, but have you been approached at all by any of the big lenders for, any sort of a tie-up or partnership or even perhaps a takeover?
Well, not for a takeover per se, but we do get approached.
Lenders for, any sort of a tie-up or partnership or even perhaps a takeover?
Well, not for a takeover per se, but we do get approached quite occasionally regarding tie-ups, sort of business correspondence with banks and whatnot. But usually we have managed raising funds and cheap funds in the past few quarters that we have sort of, not considered those options. But we are always open to any good option, that comes our way. We'll give it a due consideration. But not really, no. We have not been approached by any bank for a acquisition or anything like that.
We'll interact with you when something does finally materialize. But anyway, thanks for joining in and giving us a sense of what the outlook is for Arman Financials as we speak at 217. Let's chat metals and GMDC in focus. Elara has upgraded the EBITDA by 23%.